So we're going to get started just with basically an overview of what is the PIAAC Data Explorer, and we call it the PDX. It's a web-based application for accessing the PIAAC data and doesn't require any advanced statistical knowledge or software. It's a point-and-click method for creating your own charts and tables using the PIAAC data and exploring the variables in the background questionnaire and creating all sorts of statistics that you can export and then put into any sort of grant proposals or any documents that you're putting together. I just wanted to give you guys a brief idea of what it can and can't do before I get started. It's basically more of a simple descriptive statistics program in that you can do averages and percentages. You can do percentiles and the percentage of students at predefined proficiency levels, which I'm assuming you all are fairly familiar with now. Is PIAAC has 5 levels in literacy and numeracy, and generally considered level 2 and below is considered low skilled in literacy and numeracy. So you can run significance tests on the types of statistics that you're running. You can collapse response categories within a variable if you're interested in kind of grouping different people together, and then it'll run the programs for you, accounting for all the statistical errors and the complex sample design so that you get accurate estimates and no chance of making mistakes there. What it can't do is run regression models or multi-level analyses, and you can't create new variables based on the existing data. So the more advanced statistical techniques that you would want to do those for are better suited for the IDB Analyzer, which is a program also offered for exploring the PIAAC data. But I'm assuming you all are mostly interested in the former, so let's go ahead and get started. I think to join the webinar, I had asked you all to go to the PIAAC website, the PIAAC Gateway website, which if you just go to Google, you can type in PIAAC Gateway, and it'll come right up there. From here, you can just go to Data Tools at the top and the PIAAC Data Explorer, and that'll just take you directly to the Data Explorer webpage. Currently, there is only a Data Explorer available from the OECD, which is the international organization that put this all together. But here in the U.S., the National Center for Education Statistics is planning to produce its own Data Explorer in the next few weeks. An important component of that is that it will include a lot of the U.S.-only data that you all might be interested in. A lot of questions related to health status, things like race and ethnicity, any sort of U.S.-specific information that would not normally be in the international data set. And that will be on the NCS website within the next couple weeks. Seems to be having a little trouble loading right now. I'll give it a second. There we go. So feel free to follow along on your own if you want to pull this up on your screen, or you just want to watch me go through it. This is the first screen you'll come to. There are 4 different steps within the Data Explorer, and the first step you're going to want to do is select your subject area. Now you have the choice of the 3 domains, and I'm going to go ahead and select literacy for this demonstration. Once you select your domain, you're going to be able to choose your dependent variable, which is most likely going to be performance on the literacy assessment, but there are also quite a few other variables that you can use as your dependent variable, things like index of skill use at work, all kinds of indices that they've created. It's all the continuous variables from the data set, either that have been derived or things like that have been self-reported, such as earnings. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is also a great way to explore what is available in the data set, because all of the variables have been grouped by major topics and then subtopics within them. So you can see as I'm going through the International Background Questionnaire, if you have a specific topic in mind, it's easy to find the variables this way, rather than running through the whole list of variables. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and just select literacy. It's already been selected for me. At the top here, where my cursor is, you can see that they actually have data from all three assessments, not just PIAAC, but the Adult Literacy and Life Skills Survey that was conducted in 2003, and the International Adult Literacy Survey from 1994. Not all of the data has been trended, but the major components, such as the literacy scale, has been trended across the three assessments. And certain major groupings like gender and things like that have been trended, so you can do some analyses over time. But it's important to keep in mind that these are separate cross-sectional surveys, so they're not tracking the same people over time. You're just going to be able to do trends on a national level. The second part of it is you're going to choose your jurisdictions here on the bottom half. Right now there are only 23 countries available, I believe. Most of them OECD countries. So I'm just going to, you can select all of them by just clicking OECD national entities, but you can also just select them one by one depending on your interests. I'm going to select all. I'm also going to just select the average for the OECD for my analysis. And I'm only going to look at PIAAC now, but as I mentioned, for some countries, depending on whether they took the other two assessments, you can select data from previous years. Once you've selected your dependent variable and your jurisdictions, this is going to take you to the screen where you can select one or more independent variables to correlate with your dependent variable. Of course, you can just do an overall, all adults, but then you have your major reporting groups here: gender, education level, work history, and such. There's hundreds of variables here, especially once you get into the background questionnaire. The trend variables, if you're interested in trending, are in a separate category, and you can browse that as you wish. I'm not going to go through all of this because there's a lot here, but
what happens if you click on details? What's that?
Oh, so that will give you more detail about what the variable means. It will give you a full title of the variable. It will give you the variable name and then the values. Okay. So this is actually, for today's demonstration, I was thinking of looking at literacy levels across different employment statuses. So this is a subjective status being self-reported. I'm going to click that, and that's going to be my independent variable. You can choose as many as you want, but to keep it simple, I'm just going to go with that one. If you've selected a whole bunch of independent variables, you can just click "You selected it," and it will just narrow it down to what you're interested in. You can also search if you don't feel like going through all of that. But yeah, any questions so far before I go on to the next step? All right. So once you've selected all your variables, it's going to take you to the Edit Report screen, and this is where you can manipulate how you want your output to look and the types of statistics that you want to produce. So it automatically creates reports based on the variables you've chosen. If you go under Statistics Options, this will change the statistics options for all the reports listed. You can also do them individually, but say if you only want averages for all your reports, this is an easier way to do it. For this, I'm just going to stick with averages, but you have choices of percentages. Well, I'll do percentages too. You can select up to 2 statistics per report. And you have your achievement levels that I mentioned before, combined and discrete, and percentiles as well. So I'm going to do averages and percentages for my report. for these countries. By subjective work status, we're going to look at the literacy levels within each of those groups. Now, you may have noticed in the list of values for this variable, there are a lot of options. And if you want to change that, if you're only interested in a few of them, what you do is go to Edit here next to the report that you're working on. And this will give you a better idea of what is going to be contained in the report that you produce. And under the variable title, the independent variable, you can click Create New. And then when you select your variable that you want to change, you're going to get a list of all the values. So say I'm only interested in full-time employed and unemployed, and the rest I just want to group into another category, and that's not what I'm interested in. So what I can do is select everyone except full-time employed and unemployed. And once I've selected all of them, I can create a new value, just call it Other, and hit Create. And then it will collapse all those other categories together. So now I'm only looking at employed, unemployed, and other. So this obviously is very helpful so you don't have a million numbers in your data tables. You just want to focus it on a certain group of people. So now that I've done that, I just deselect the old one and select the new one. I've got the statistics chosen that I'm interested in, the countries. Here you can, at the bottom, you can change the layout if you, for whatever reason, want your jurisdictions in a column instead of a row. It's a very easy way of just moving them back and forth, which is nice. I'm going to keep it as the standard jurisdictions as rows. And once I'm done making all those changes, you can preview it just to see what it will look like in case you're interested before you go through the whole process. So once you've selected all that, you're good to go. You have some formatting options here if you're interested in just the decimal places and brackets, use of brackets and things like that, just some minor formatting changes. Once it's all done, you hit Build Report, and this part will actually take a little while because it's behind the scenes doing all the very complex statistical analysis that you would normally have to do to produce a table like this. So this can take up to a few minutes. This would be a good time if anyone had any questions so far. So I populated my table. I just wanted to show you a few more features you can do to make this a little more accessible to your audience. One of the great features is the chart option here, and there are a variety of types of charts that you can load up to display your data table. Let's just say I am interested in the averages right now, not the percentages in each category. You can do a bar chart, you can do a column chart, or a line chart. I'm going to go with column. That seems to make the most sense. And you can group them by year or jurisdiction. I'm not going to group them by anything, except they'll be these are going to be individual charts by country. As you browse through them, you can see that they change in a dynamic way. But again, if I were to choose a different types of grouping, I could choose by year. That's not the one I wanted. By jurisdiction. And then you can get all your tables, all your countries together in the same table, depending on how you want to display this information. There are options to change the color and the patterns, or change between them by clicking this button up here. But it's a pretty straightforward way to get your data in a more visual way. Once you have it looking the way you want it to look, you just click Done, and it will produce that chart. And then you will be able to export that and put it into any report that you're working on. Another great feature of this is the significance testing. So an important thing to note about when you're estimating literacy levels on a scale for a large population, and you have two groups that you're looking at and you're wondering whether one is higher than the other, you need to conduct a significance test, which is a statistical formula that you plug the numbers into to make sure that that difference is actually not just chance, but a statistically valid difference. So what you do is you click on significance test. You can do it in a variety of ways, either within a country or between countries, across years. So let's say I'm interested in whether the difference in literacy levels of the unemployed, so I'm just only interested in the unemployed, are different between Canada and the United States, right? So we're wondering whether unemployed people in Canada have higher literacy or lower literacy levels than American unemployed. I'm going to click the average, because that's what I'm interested in. And then I click Done. And it's just going to give me a little chart here that's going to say that there is no significant difference. So there's an X in that cell, and it's going to provide you the statistical details. But basically what you can take from this is that there's no real difference, that gap of only 6 points is actually not statistically significant. So that's an important thing to know, because you might say, one score is 6 points higher, so they must be smarter. But when you actually do the statistical test, you learn that there is actually no difference. There are a number of ways you can do this and display in a way that is better for your audience to understand. One of the more interesting ways is a map. So you actually have a map option here besides the table. And if I click the map, and again, I'm interested in knowing about the literacy levels of the unemployed, but I've got a lot of countries here, so that would be a really big, confusing table. What you can do is select all your jurisdictions, your unemployed, and your average scores, or percentages, whatever you're interested in, and click Done. And this will actually pull up a very colorful map of all the countries that you're looking at. And you can select your focus country, your focal jurisdiction, which will then change the color of all the other countries in the map. And the little legend at the bottom will tell you which color means having a higher average, means having a lower average, or is not different. So I've selected the United States. The average literacy level of unemployed people in the United States is 250. As we saw before, you can kind of float over each country, and this says, Canada is not significantly different from the U.S. But you can see that, for example, unemployed people in Spain are lower, but unemployed people in Finland are higher. So this is just a little more of an accessible way to get the information across to your viewer. So once you've created all the charts, tables, and tests that you need, you can go up here to export results, and you can export either in HTML, in Excel, or Word. You just select what you want to export. Excel I find to be the easiest to manipulate because they're in cells, so you can move them around a little bit easier. But whatever is best for you, you just click Done.
One thing about this is that if you don't press Done, this is cited. If you don't press Done, for example, you didn't,
Right.
Tim didn't press Done, then you won't be able to export it.
Right, sorry. It's an easy thing to overlook, which I just did. You hit export. I'm going to export it in Excel, and I'll just save it so you guys can see what it looks like. Here you go. So this is what your export is going to look like in Excel. It's going to include all the things that you've created in your report.